Good afternoon, lads. Going to be a continuation now of our 10 stacker, the cannon we were making yesterday. So this is where we left off. We finished our power and we finished our compressor. So the goal for today is what we're going to be doing is we're going to be hooking up the compressor to the power with some boosters. Additionally, I'm also going to try and get the hammer done today as well. So what we're going to do is, so I can show you where we got up to yesterday. I'm going to fire that, and then I'm going to have a look. Boom, and /CE, 10 sand. So what we're going to do from here is we are going to think about how we're going to hook this booster up and how we're going to time everything out. So a general rule of thumb when you're hooking up these final boosters up specifically is one redstone tick between boosters, ideally. And then one redstone tick before the power, that booster is going to go off. So what we're going to do from here is we're just going to extend this out a little bit, try and line this up with the cannon, and give it a little barrel. Nah, we'll just leave it as is. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to see if we can put some webs up and just see where the sand ends up, which is going to dictate about where the booster needs to sit. So okay, so it's shooting everything with an upwards angle. So we're going to want the booster to sit a little bit higher up. So what we're going to do from here is, because physically we need this booster to fire everything half a block above, and our cannon actually isn't in line with that, we're actually going to raise the entire cannon up, the power at least, by a block. So we're just going to copy that there. Up. Whoops. Up one, / move one up. So just raise the entire power up by a block. Well, in doing that, we've also fucked that up, inevitably. But anyway, that's okay. So we're just going to rewire this out. TNT fill. And then, yep, that's round. So what we're going to do from here is we're just going to, we'll do it from here first. So we're going to build up a little tower, and this is about where we're going to want our booster to land. So we're going to say we want our booster to hit about here. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to sort of plan it out a little bit, have a bit of a look at what sort of area we have around us, and now we can just add some dispensers in and start planning it. So we want our booster to land here. That's where we want it to land, right about there. Because we don't have any velocity on this going back towards the booster, we don't need blocks. However, if this was angled slightly back towards the booster, what I would do here is, instead of having the booster there, I would have some ladders there to stop it from going backwards into the booster, and then just have the booster there instead. Since this isn't that case, we're just going to have the booster here. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to put a piston just on the ground here, probably. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to wire this booster up. So we can go 1, 2, 3. So that's going to push up. Probably just want one there as well. One there. And we're just going to start with the maximum amount of TNT we can have, and we'll shave it off at the end. 1, 2. And then this will be, that's 6 blocks, 7, 8. And then 9, 10. That actually should be enough there. We shouldn't need too much. And then we're going to do the same here, so that's going to push up, hit that block, that's all fine, that's all fine. And then, so that's going to push up. So what I'm actually going to do is, because that pushes up to there, we need some redstone on top. And we're just going to place a block there, just so it's a little bit easier for us to build. And we're going to place a piston here. So that's got our little auto reset feature up now. So what we can do now is we can time out this entire setup. So we're going to need some blocks here, just to stop that velocity there. But that, apart from that, that should be all fine. That should shoot it straight forwards into that barrel where we have our chests. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a bit of a thought on the timings, I guess. So what we can do is, because we have these constants here, first power at 5 redstone ticks, second power at 8 redstone ticks. Now what we're going to want is we want about 1 redstone tick between the booster going off there and the power going off. So we've got 1 redstone tick for the sand to hit here, and then get pushed forwards into the barrel. Tick later, it gets shot out of the barrel. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to aim to have this booster here on 4 redstone ticks. So we can wire that now. It's going to make a nice central location to run this this circuit here. And we might just run it through this block here, and then we'll run a piston. So we need to remember that that piston is 1 redstone tick, that observer's 1 redstone tick, and then that repeater's also 1 redstone tick. So what we might do is we might just have another repeater there. This is kind of rough for now. I'll clean this cannon up once we're done. But for now, that will do. So if we TNT fill, and we fire this cannon, hopefully what's going to happen, bang, as you can see that booster there drops, and you can see that booster there goes off, and then hopefully that first power goes off. So all we have left to do now is time out this little set of dispensers here. Now the good thing about this setup here is this doesn't need a quick pulse. You can see that isn't the case because we actually have an inbuilt quick pulse for that observer there. And this this sort of little redstone contraption here, our little booster, isn't actually powering anything else. So we can just do some straight repeaters. So since our first power is going off at 5 redstone ticks, that booster here is going off at 4 redstone ticks, we're going to want this booster to go off at 3 redstone ticks. So what we're going to do is we're going to carry a feed out to this block here. We want to be powering this block. And we're going to go 1, 2, 3. We're going to TNT fill. And now we're going to fire. We're going to see if that works. If that doesn't work, we can just add some delay to that booster. Oops, what have I done? Okay, so this is an issue with bud powering here. So basically what's happening is this redstone circuit here is actually powering that piston there due to bud powering. It's getting updated by those pistons there. So what we're going to need to do here is we're actually going to need to take a bit of a think, and we're going to see if we can solve this issue one way or another. So the first way I'm thinking of doing it is by actually raising this row of redstone up by a block. And we're going to leave... So what we're going to do is we're going to leave that redstone there to power that piston, and then we're going to use bud powering for the rest of it. So we're actually going to use bud powering there, and we're going to use this piston here to initially update the rest of the pistons. So hopefully now what we can do is we can actually fire that again. So we go /fire. Look to be a bit too fast. So I don't think we actually shot anything out there. So what I'm going to try doing is I'm going to try reducing the delay to that that little booster there to see if we can get a bit more exposure. See, that works now. That looks pretty good. Actually, that looks really, really good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fire it again and see if we're hitting that wall with the first power. Boom. See there? That we've just fired some sand. Now the best way that I find to confirm this is I'm just going to stick a cobweb here, and we're going to see if we get 10 sand from this booster here, or this compressor here, all the way out to where we're firing. So we fire there, /CE, we're getting 10 pieces of sand, so that's absolutely perfect. We're firing 10 pieces of sand out through this comp here, and we're getting 10 pieces of sand up there, which is exactly what we want. So what we can do from here is we can start thinking about adding our hammer. But what I'm actually going to do just a little bit before that is we're just going to plan the rest of the cannon out. So we need about 13 hammer. So that's not much. That's going to be quite a small area. So I'm sort of thinking we might be able to get away with it without needing an infinite booster setup like this. And we can just do that in a very, very small area. So, thinking, I'm going to raise this up a little bit. So what I'm kind of doing here is I'm stopping exposure from getting from here to where I'm going to want the hammer to be, which is about here. So I don't want any exposure from that. Now the reason we can do this is because we're using that game tick method with the triangles as shown before. So what's basically happening is when this booster fires, it's actually going to stay in the same block for the first game tick. And what we're hoping is that first game tick is going to shoot it through this little 1x1 hole. So we're just going to fire it, and we're just going to see if that's the case again. Boom. You can see there, if we go run/CE, That's 10. So we've gotten 10 sand now from this spot here all the way out to there. So all that we really have left to do is wire up the hammer, and we're going to be adding something called a one-shot as well. A one-shot, or alternatively, it's also called the scanner. So what we're going to do from here is, let's have a bit of a look. So just thinking about the best way for us to wire this, and I'm sort of thinking that we might just do it like this. So if we have that booster there, we physically drop all that TNT. Maybe we'll put it a block lower, block higher. I kind of want to keep it in line with this booster here. Now, because we're using a 3 redstone tick offset, I'm also thinking, instead of needing to run a whole separate feed for it, we can just power it off this booster. So what I might actually do here is I might just run the observer there. So the reason why I'm running an observer there is so I can pick up the pulse length from this piston, which is going to be a quick pulse because we're pushing up observers there. So this piston is going to quick pulse, and then we can have a piston here. Yep, perfect. We can have a piston there, and then what we can do from there is actually have the rest of our observers. So we don't probably need one there. And then what we'll do is when this is in the raised position, it will be sitting there. So it'll be a block higher than it actually is, and we can put an observer at the top there. And then we can go boom, boom. And then we can actually raise all this up a little bit. And then we can just continue this nice little pattern all the way up. 1, 1, 1, 2, and then 1. It's offset by like 2 blocks. What I might actually do is, because this booster is going to need less power than that booster there, I'm actually going to have this a bit shorter, I think. So that pushes up, that defaults there, and then we can have this little redstone set up here. We actually need the block on the other side because I want to put redstone there, because when that observer there powers that dispenser there, it's going to power that piston, push it back down. So we're going to place a piece of redstone there, and then we're going to place that block there. So what we need to do now is we need to time this booster out, which conveniently enough, because we're using observers, it's actually come out. Oh, really? The pains of using Australian internet. Okay. Take 2, since my internet's shitting the bed right now. Basically what we're going to do from this point here is we're going to have a bit of a think. So we have our powers offset by 3 redstone ticks. Now we want our boosters to go off 1 tick before the power. So that in turn means we're going to want our boosters offset by 2 redstone ticks, which funnily enough is the perfect scenario here. So when this observer gets powered here, or this dispenser gets powered here, the observer picks it up, 1 redstone tick. The observer then powers that piston, 2 redstone ticks. That observer will then power that dispenser, 3 redstone ticks. So it's actually timed out perfectly for us in this scenario here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to fire it again. Fire that. And see, we've got 2 separate drops there of the TNT, and hopefully, okay. So what's happened there is I think that that power there is given a tiny bit of exposure, or it could have actually been this booster, to be honest, is giving that booster there a tiny bit of exposure. So what we can do is we can actually place some blocks up there, and that will hopefully block the exposure there. So we're going to fire it again, just make sure we're getting no exposure on that. Bang. Sweet. So that's exactly what we want. So what we can do from here is we can sort of plan out where we want our hammer to be sitting. So in this scenario, because this is going to be quite a small cannon, I might actually wire the hammer up like that. So we'll have that physical row of dispensers and observers just a little bit further along. Now, because we want the Y and the X offset for that, I'm thinking we just put a ladder there, and we just drop everything onto that ladder. And then what that's going to do is it's going to shoot it up into that slab there, and then out of the barrel. So, okay. So it looks like that probably won't actually work there, because we're going to need that guider. So my second sort of option here So basically what the problem is, I can't really drop that down without not having this guider here, because it's not going to fall through this guider. So what I might do is I might just have the dispensers a block to the side, so they'll drop everything a block to the side of that, and then they're going to push it forwards. And this is actually going to help us a lot later when we want to add something additional to this cannon as well. So what we can do from here is we can put that piston there to sort of show that this is where we want to drop our hammer, build a couple of blocks around that, so we've got like a nice little enclosure for it, and now we have an additional thing that we need to time out and wire. So what we're going to do from here is we're sort of going to plan out where we want this hammer dropping. So I want that dropping about there. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using a piston to push up the side, and I'll probably, okay, so I want that first observer to face that way, and then that way. Now with all these boosters here, the TNT amount doesn't really matter too much. With this hammer, I'm pretty sure, we talked about the hammer ratios in the last episode, where, I don't know why that's changed to crying obsidian there, but the approximate ratio is 1 to 1.15 to 1.3. So what we're going to want here is actually 13 dispensers. So we're going to stack up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 9 pieces of TNT there. So 10, 11, 12, 13. That brings us to 13 pieces of TNT. So what we can do now is we're just going to wire the rest of this up. Boom. And then hopefully this is okay. So when that pushes up, looks like we're a piece of TNT too short. Just in this scenario here. So what we might do here, we can do something a bit cheeky. So the problem is when this observer here gets pushed up here, it's not going to be powering that top piece of redstone. I'm trying to think of a way that I can just cheese this out and just do something really stupid and easy, but nothing's coming to mind really. So what I might do is we might just actually go over the hammer amount and just skim it back later. So we'll just go 1, 2, then when that one goes up there, it's going to power that redstone, which in turn is going to power this hammer piston here, just going to push that down. Now, so that the separation on the wall between the hammer and this booster here doesn't get too large, what we're going to do is we're actually going to have quite a short delay on this hammer. So we're going to want maybe, I'm thinking we're just going to go with 3 redstone ticks again. So the best way to do that probably is, I'm trying to think of the nicest way to power this right now, because what we need to think about as well is we need to get power to this piston here, and it's going to be a bit annoying to do that without expanding the cannon too much. So what we might do is, might just run underneath, to be honest. So that observer there, that's actually going to power that redstone. We don't really want that. So what I might do is I might just run it like that. And then what we can do is we can actually power that from underneath. It's not a particularly nice solution, but what we can do is we can just fire it and just see if it somewhat works, I guess. So I'll put some blocks there, and then we'll put a couple of blocks along there as well, and we'll fire. And see there, that's our hammer pulsing as well. It's not going to work. That's because we don't have that piston wired up. But what we can do now is we can actually wire that piston up. So this is going to be a pretty ugly looking solution, but shit. Okay, so I do have an idea, and that's going to be to run some redstone in here. It's going to be a bit hard to see, but that redstone will be sitting underneath that piston. It won't be powering that piston there, but it will be powering that piston in the middle. So what we're going to end up doing now is we're going to end up timing this out. So we want this to push just before that booster goes off. So a pretty good estimation we can do for that is we can have a look at what the timings for this booster are. Or, no, I'm looking at the wrong thing. These all look the same. What we can do actually is look at the timings for this booster here, which is actually a booster and not actually the hammer. We can have a bit of a look at the timings again. 1, that repeater there is 1. 2, repeater. 3, piston. 4, observer. 5, observer. 6 piston, 7 observer. So this is going off at 7. So I want that piston to be extending maybe 38 ticks after 7, which is going to end up being 37, maybe about 45 roughly. So what we can do from here is we can have a look at the ticks we have already. So a piston is 1 tick to push, and we're going to be running it from maybe here. So I got 1 tick there, so we need about 11 repeaters to get 44. So what we're going to do is, I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that should be taking us pretty close. So what we can do now is we can TNT fill, and we can actually fire this and see if this works. So we're keeping an eye on that piston there. I've got no idea where that TNT went, I'll be honest. I'm going to fill that in a little bit more, just see if I can see where it's going. It didn't look like it boosted. I'm going to try reducing the delay a little bit on that. Make that go off a bit earlier or something. Okay. So, one of the problems here is, this is the problem that I've just remembered, is we wanted this about 3 redstone ticks after the power. We have it 3 redstone ticks after this booster here. So instead of doing that, what we're going to do is we're going to add another tick there, just to make sure that we are going off the power. The second issue, I'm not quite sure on just yet. Have to have a bit of a look. That's way too early. Okay, so we're going to add those 3 redstone ticks back. I'm going to fire again. That still looks way too early. So we're just going to add a bit more delay. Another 2 ticks or something. We're going to fire again. That looks pretty close. You can see there, we know that the TNT actually hit the guider because we have no more guider. We just shot out our own guider. So, well done. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it out of an indestructible block like emerald. We're going to try firing this again. Bang! There you go. So now you can see that's our very, very first cannon that's actually stacked sand. You'll notice it's not perfectly in line with the guider, but that's okay for now. This is sort of just showing the methodology behind getting your very, very first sand stacker going. So what we're going to do in the next episode is we're going to fix a couple of these issues. So the first one being, it's not stacking up to where we want to stack. So ideally with a cannon like this, we want it for now just to stack 1 below this guider. So while the cannon is stacking up to that block there, we actually want it to stack a little bit higher. So you can see, boom. So what we're going to talk about in the next episode is something called 1rev. So basically what 1rev is going to do is it's going to boost, it's a piece of TNT that gets fired with the sand that's going to physically boost this sand up a little bit higher. It's also going to boost the hammer up a little bit higher as well. So instead of the sand being down here when it gets shot down, the hammer being up here, it's actually going to fire it up a little bit. So you'll end up closer to a situation like that. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. So apart from that, this little episode is done for the time being, and I will catch you all in the next